James Chin never expected his mundane life in Millbrook Valley to change. The small village nestled between rolling hills was home to exactly 2,847 people, and he knew most of them by name. Working as a software developer remotely meant his daily routine rarely varied. Wake up, coffee, code, occasional walks to the local market, more code, sleep. Repeat. The dream started on a Tuesday night in October. At first, they were just flashes, electric blue hair flowing in an impossible wind, crimson eyes that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. He would wake with his heart racing, the phantom scent of ozone lingering in his nostrils. By the third week, the dreams had become more vivid. The woman with the blue hair would walk toward him through a metallic corridor he didn't recognize. Her movements were too fluid, almost feline, and her skin had an otherworldly sheen to it. She never spoke, but James could feel her presence in his mind like a soft whisper. "You need to get up more," his sister Michelle told him over their weekly video call. "All that coding is making you crazy." Maybe she was right. That's what led him to sign up for a gym membership at Elite Fitness, the only proper gym within 20 miles of Millbrook Valley. It had opened recently, and the sleek modern building stood out among the village's weathered brick structures like a chrome spaceship among wooden cabins. The first time he walked in, the air felt charged with static electricity. He blamed it on the rubber mats and synthetic clothing, but something about it reminded him of his dreams. The front desk staff gave him a tour, showing him the equipment, the smoothie bar, and introducing him to some of the trainers. That's when he saw her. She was adjusting weights on a rack, her back turned to him. Electric blue hair tied in a precise braid that ran down to her waist. When she turned around, James forgot how to breathe. Red eyes, not the kind of reddish-brown some people had, but true crimson, like garnets catching sunlight. "This is Arya," the staff member said. "One of our best personal trainers." Arya smiled, and James felt the same whisper in his mind that he'd experienced in his dreams. "I've been waiting for you," she said, extending her hand. Her skin was cool to the touch, with that same ethereal sheen he'd seen while sleeping. James tried to speak, but his mouth had gone dry. This wasn't possible. She wasn't possible. Yet here she was, the woman from his dreams, standing in a small-town gym in Millbrook Valley. "You'll be working with Arya," the staff member continued, oblivious to James's shock. "She specifically requested you when we got your membership application." Of course she had. James looked at Arya again, and this time he caught something else in those impossible eyes: calculation, perhaps even predatory interest. He should have turned around and run. Should have cancelled his membership and moved to another town. But he couldn't. The dreams had prepared him for this moment, whether he knew it or not. "When do we start?" he heard himself ask. Arya's smile widened, showing teeth that were just a little too perfect, a little too white. "Right now, if you're ready." And that's how it began, not with the dreams, but with the moment James Chin chose to walk toward the woman from his dreams instead of away from her. Looking back, he would wonder if he ever really had a choice at all. The next few weeks passed in a blur of training sessions and increasingly intense dreams. Arya was an exceptional trainer, pushing James to limits he didn't know he had. Her knowledge of human anatomy was uncanny, almost as if she could see through skin and muscle to the cellular level. During their sessions, he caught glimpses of things that didn't quite make sense. The way she moved too quickly sometimes, like frames missing from a video. How the electronics in the gym would occasionally glitch when she was agitated. The strange symbols that sometimes appeared on her skin when she sweated, fading away before anyone else could notice. One evening, after everyone else had left the gym, Arya finally spoke about what they both knew was hanging between them. "You're not crazy," she said, her crimson eyes seeming to glow in the dimming light. "The dreams were real. I sent them to you." James sat on a weight bench, his towel forgotten in his hands. "Why me?" Arya's laugh was like wind chimes in a storm. "Because you were compatible. Because you were kind. Because you were alone." She paused, her expression growing serious. "Because my people are dying, James." She told him everything then. About her people, the Lasari, a race of beings from a dying world 16 light-years from Earth. About their ability to reach across space and time through dreams, to find compatible beings on other worlds. About their desperate need to preserve their species. "We can blend in almost perfectly," she explained, running a hand through her blue hair. "This isn't dye, it's my natural color. We can alter our appearance somewhat, but some traits remain. The eyes, for instance. And certain abilities, like sending dreams, among others." She demonstrated by lifting her hand, causing all the free weights in the room to float momentarily before settling back down. "We're not so different from humans, really. Just a few thousand years more evolved." James should have been terrified. Should have been running for the door. Instead, he found himself fascinated. "How many of you are there, on Earth?" 12. All female. Her expression darkened. "On our world?" "Less than 1,000 now. The radiation from our dying sun." She trailed off, pain evident in her voice. "Why are you telling me all this?" Arya moved closer, her movement too smooth to be human. "Because I need your help, James. My people need your help. We've found that human DNA is compatible with ours, and through careful selection, we can preserve our species while creating something new. Something better." The implications hit him like a physical blow. "You want to have a baby?" "With me, yes." Her directness was startling. "But it's not that simple. Our genetic structure is complex. The process would require multiple attempts, and there are procedures that would need to be followed, and if I say no..." Her smile turned sad. "You won't. You've been dreaming about me for weeks, James. The dreams weren't just communication. They were preparing your mind, your body, for compatibility. You're already part of this, whether you want to be or not." He wanted to argue, to deny it, but he could feel the truth of her words in his bones. The dreams had changed him, altered something fundamental in his chemistry. He could feel her presence in his mind now, even when awake, a constant, humming awareness. "Do I really have a choice?" he asked, already knowing the answer. "There's always a choice," Arya said, but her eyes said something different. "But I hope you'll choose to help us. To help me." As she spoke, James felt the familiar whisper in his mind grow stronger, more insistent. He realized that while she was giving him the illusion of choice, she had already decided for both of them. The question was whether he would accept it willingly or fight against the inevitable. The next few days were a haze of internal struggle. James went through the motions of his normal life, coding, eating, sleeping, but his mind was consumed by the choice before him. Or rather, the lack of choice. He could feel Arya's presence more strongly now, a constant pressure at the edges of his consciousness. The dreams had intensified, filled with visions of crystal cities and twin suns burning red in an alien sky. He saw children with blue hair and red eyes playing in gardens of impossible flowers. Whether these were memories of her world or visions of a possible future, he couldn't tell. During their training sessions, which continued as if nothing had changed, Arya began teaching him about her people. The Lasari had evolved beyond many physical limitations that still bound humans. They could process information at incredible speeds, manipulate energy fields, and communicate telepathically. But their advanced evolution had come at a cost, increasing difficulty with reproduction, especially after their sun's radiation had damaged their genetic structure. "We're not trying to replace humans," she explained one evening as they sat in the empty gym. "We're trying to save ourselves by creating something new. A hybrid that takes the best of both species." "And what happens to the children?" James asked. "Would they be experiments? Studied and tested?" Arya's eyes flashed with anger. "They would be loved. Protected. Taught to understand both their human and Lasari heritage." Her expression softened. "I would never let any harm come to my child, James. Our child." The possessiveness in her voice sent a shiver down his spine. She spoke of their hypothetical offspring as if they already existed, as if they were an inevitability rather than a possibility. One night, unable to sleep, James drove to the gym. He found Arya in the empty building, standing in the middle of the workout floor. The air around her crackled with energy, and her hair floated as if suspended in water. "I knew you would come," she said, not turning around. "You've made your decision, have I?" He stepped closer, drawn by the energy emanating from her. "Or did you make it for me?" She turned then, and her eyes were glowing like embers. "I influenced your dreams, yes. Prepared your body for compatibility. But the final choice must be yours. The mixing of our species requires willingness. Consent. Without it, the process fails." James thought about his life before the dreams, quiet, predictable, safe. He thought about the visions he'd seen, the possibilities they represented. About the children with impossible eyes and the power to change the world. "If I agree," he said slowly, "I want conditions." Arya raised an eyebrow, a very human gesture that somehow made her seem more alien. "Such as, I want to be involved. Not just in the conception, but in the child's life. I want to know everything, about the procedures, about how they'll be raised, about what they might become." "Agreed." She moved closer, her movements liquid and hypnotic. "What else? No more mental manipulation. No more controlling my dreams. If we do this, we do it as equals." Arya laughed, the sound like crystal wind chimes. "Equals? Oh, James. We'll never be equals. But I understand what you're asking, and I agree. No more direct manipulation of your mind." She stood before him now, close enough that he could see the subtle patterns shifting beneath her skin, like constellation maps changing in real time. "Is that all?" James took a deep breath. "One more thing. I want the truth, all of it. No more surprises, no more hidden agendas. The truth?" Arya's smile held secrets older than human civilization. "Are you sure you're ready for that?" Before he could answer, she placed her hand on his chest. Images flooded his mind, the full history of her people, their achievements, their mistakes, their desperate fight for survival. He saw the truth of what their children might become, the power they would hold, the challenges they would face. When the vision ended, James staggered, his mind reeling from the download of information. Arya steadied him, her touch sending electric currents through his body. "That's the truth," she said softly. "All of it. Do you still want to proceed?" James looked into her impossible eyes and saw both the end of one story and the beginning of another. He knew that his answer would change not just his life, but potentially the future of two species. "Yes," he said, and felt the word echo through both their minds like a contract written in starlight. What followed was unlike anything James could have imagined, even in his strangest dreams. Arya explained that the process of creating a viable hybrid child required more than just physical interaction, it needed a complete synchronization of bodies and minds. They began with what she called cellular harmonization. For 3 weeks, James had to follow a strict regimen of special nutrients and exercises designed to alter his body chemistry to be more compatible with Lissari biology. The supplements Arya provided glowed faintly in the dark and tasted like liquid starlight. During this time, their training sessions took on a different character. Instead of traditional exercises, Arya taught him to meditate, to open his mind to the subtle energies she could manipulate so easily. Sometimes, when their minds aligned just right, he could see the world as she did, a complex web of energy patterns and probability waves. "Your species sees such a small portion of reality," she told him during one session. "We'll need to expand your perception before we can proceed with the final stage." The changes in his body were subtle at first: increased energy, sharper senses, dreams that felt more real than reality. Then came the more dramatic transformations. His eyes began to pick up ultraviolet light, creating halos around certain objects. His skin became more sensitive, able to detect electromagnetic fields. Sometimes, late at night, he could hear Arya's thoughts like distant music. "Your DNA is adapting well," she said after running some tests with equipment that looked more like sculpture than technology. "Better than any previous candidate." "Previous candidate?" James felt a spike of jealousy that surprised him. "How many others have there been?" Arya's expression turned somber. "Many. None survived the full process." She must have sensed his sudden fear because she quickly added, "But none of them achieved the level of compatibility you have. You're different, James. Special." The final stage of preparation involved what Arya called quantum entanglement, a process of linking their consciousness at the deepest level. They spent hours in the gym after closing, sitting across from each other while she guided him through exercises and mental synchronization. One night, something clicked. James felt his consciousness expand, merging with areas like two streams joining to form a river. In that moment of connection, he understood everything: the desperate loneliness of her people, the weight of responsibility she carried, the genuine affection she had developed for him despite her initial calculating approach. He also saw something that terrified him: the full scope of what their child might become. Not just a hybrid, but a bridge between species, a being with the potential to reshape reality itself. "Now you understand," Arya whispered, her mental voice echoing in their shared consciousness. "This isn't just about survival. It's about evolution. Transformation. The next step for both our species." The actual conception had to take place during a specific astronomical alignment, when the energies of Earth and Arya's home world would be in harmony. They converted the gym's yoga studio into a chamber filled with crystals that hummed with strange frequencies. "Are you ready?" Arya asked as they stood in the crystal chamber, the air thick with potential. James looked at her, this impossible being who had disrupted his life, invaded his dreams, and somehow made him fall in love with the idea of a future he couldn't fully comprehend. "No," he said honestly. "But let's do it anyway." The conception process was both more and less than James had expected. There was physical intimacy, yes, but also a melding of energies and consciousness that made the physical act seem almost secondary. At the moment of conception, he saw visions of possible futures branching out like fractal patterns, each one containing versions of their child, some beautiful, some terrifying, all of them world-changing. Afterward, as they lay surrounded by softly humming crystals, Arya explained what would happen next. The pregnancy would last 7 months by Earth time, during which she would need to remain close to him to maintain the genetic stability of the developing child. "You'll need to help me manage the energy fluctuations," she said, her hand resting on her stomach where their child was already beginning to grow. "The combination of our DNA will create unique challenges." She wasn't exaggerating. Over the next few months, strange things began happening around Millbrook Valley. Electronic devices would malfunction when Arya experienced morning sickness. During her mood swings, the local weather would shift dramatically. Small objects would orbit around her when she slept. James learned to help her control these manifestations, using the mental connection they developed to help stabilize the enormous energies their growing child was generating. He converted his home office into a shielded room where she could safely release excess energy without causing townwide blackouts. The townspeople, of course, noticed something was different about the new gym trainer who had moved in with the quiet software developer. But small towns have their own way of accepting strange things, and most people simply adjusted their reality to accommodate the unexplainable. As the pregnancy progressed, their mental connection deepened. James could feel the developing consciousness of their child, a mind that operated on levels he could barely comprehend, already processing information in ways that neither human nor Lasari brain could match. "What will they become?" he asked Arya one night as they watched aurora-like manifestations of their child's dreams dancing across the ceiling. "Something new," she replied, her eyes reflecting the shifting lights. "Something that neither of our species could have become alone." She turned to look at him, her expression more human than he'd ever seen it. "Are you afraid, terrified?" He admitted. "Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe and comment if you want to see more interesting stories.